Okay, quiet on the set, please. Roll sound.
Sound rolling.
Camera rolling. Scene 10, take 2. Quiet on the set, please.
Hi, I'm Julian Camarillo, producer of Rude Boy the Movie, and I'd like to genuinely thank you all for joining us today. The way we pulled off making Rude Boy the Movie was truly a group effort. People donated their time, their talents, their homes, their businesses to shoot on location, their cars, their scooters. It really was a group effort. We will be holding a special online screening of Rude Boy the Movie. Just click the link in the description for all the details. Well, the quintessential movie that comes to mind for me was Quadrophenia that we all had to see. But in addition to that, there were films like Suburbia and Repo Man. I remember going down to the Balboa Theater in Newport Beach to see Dance Craze and Urga Music War. These were the big films that I had to see at that time. We'd find out through other friends that maybe knew somebody that worked at the theater where it was playing, or sometimes it was in the newspaper. I remember going with some friends, like I mentioned, down to the Balboa Theater to see Dance Craze and Urga Music War. It's just, the general talk amongst all our friends, hey, did you check out this movie? Hey, did you check out that movie? And we would get together and go see it. And if it wasn't playing in the theater, someone would go rent the VHS tape, or someone would purchase it, or get their hands on it one way or another, and we'd all get together and watch it together. Yeah, it was definitely almost like a little event for us, because, we would have to, actually go pick up the VHS tape or get our hands on the VHS tape, and then, call our friends, hey, we're going to watch this, do you want to come over, tell so-and-so, and everyone would come over and we'd all sit down, maybe have a couple beers, and we'd, watch this film, and we'd talk about it, we'd look at what everyone was wearing, we'd listen to the music, oh, that's by so-and-so, have you heard that? I've never heard that, and it was like, it was this culture that we had that, that, I don't know, it's how we learned about the scene. Well, our goal when we were originally talking about making this movie was to have it sit right alongside those movies that I previously mentioned. Quadrophenia was a mod movie, Suburbia was a punk rock movie, and though Dance Craze was a movie about two-tone ska, there hasn't been an actual drama like Suburbia or Quadrophenia that was centered around the ska scene, and definitely specifically not around our ska scene in Orange County. Rude Boy the movie was a low-budget film, and it was made with very limited resources. When you make a movie, there are a lot of people that do a lot of very specific jobs. And what I quickly found out was I couldn't handle everything. So luckily, we had Jeff Anthony come in, and he was able to take care of all the things that I couldn't be there for, or I couldn't do myself. He really stepped it up a lot. In essence, he really was the assistant producer on this film.
I just believed in myself, and again, I had various skills and training, fortunately, in various backgrounds like audio and working on sets, and it was a thing of wherever there was a need, if I had my hands free, I jumped in and took care of it.
Well, there was a TV show called MB3 that would come on after school, and I would watch that, and I remember there were a couple of guys on there wearing suits and trench coats with badges on them and things like that, and they'd get busy when like a song by Madness came on, and so I used to buy all my records at Pure Records, and I went there and I found an album and saw that had that Madness logo on it, and it ended up being Dance Craze, and that was the first ska album I ever bought, and I got lucky because That one album had every two-tone band on it, so I got a slice of the whole scene with that one album. So at that point, I was actually able to go out and go after all the individual bands' albums, and eventually, I became just a huge fan of the whole two-tone scene. I remember Kingdom of the Dancing Stallions. My mom would drop me off, and maybe me and a couple friends, and we'd get out, and everybody was there. You look across, and you see as you walk up, you see the people off on the side smoking their cloves. You see a lot of teased hairspray hair. You see people dressed like Boy George, people dressed like Adamant, and then there was a group of people dressed, in trench coats and hats with a lot of badges on them. Everybody really excited and just chatting away. You finally get inside. I remember there was a person inside Kingdom of the Dancing Stallions that sold buttons, sold badges, and I would always go right over to that table and look for any ska pins that I didn't already have, and then eventually we'd go inside and we'd start dancing, and then when they would play us our Madness song, or I remember they would always play That'll Do Nicely by Bad Manners there, and that's when we would all jump up and go dance our moves. Yeah, I think we were absolutely able to pull off the 1980s element for this movie. The film is set in 1984, so naturally we had to use vintage clothing for the wardrobe. Some of this clothing in this film would actually belong to me and the director. Back from the day, and shoes that we wore and things like that. The scenes that we shot on the street, the director made it a point to find streets that were timeless, along the train tracks, things like that. So it could be today, it could have been 30 years ago, we don't know. And he was very careful in choosing those kinds of locations. We took a basic bedroom and we cleaned it out and brought in all kinds of vintage posters from the 80s and authentic items from the 80s to the neon light in the corner of the room, to the neon telephone that a lot of the girls I knew used to have. It was just, I think we did a really good job, with a lot of the props and the furniture and the things that we did. And we were also able to use the services of Stray Cat Vintage in Fullerton, where she specializes in a lot of vintage clothing, and a good chunk of our wardrobe came from her over there.
I discovered ska because of my brother Gabe and my sister Laura, who used to go out to the clubs. They brought it home to me. It was hand delivered to me. I was about 10 years old, 9 years old, and my brother and sister would come over, and they had gone to the record store, and they would just play the music. Some of it I liked, some of it I didn't like, but what I did like, I really enjoyed. And when they were gone and they were off to the clubs, when I was allowed to go because I was the tag-along brother, I would play the records and put them back before they got home. So it meant Madness, it meant the Specials, it meant the Selector, it meant the local bands were the Donkey Show, No Doubt, the Untouchables, and all these great bands that we were so lucky to be part of the local scene in our little microcosm of Orange County. It's funny because that's exactly how I met some of the people that I would know for the rest of my life. One day I walk into my band room at my high school, and I see a trombone with these special stickers, and at that point ska wasn't really something that was in the mainstream, so it was kind of like kind of an underground thing still. The '84 wave had kind of come and gone, but there was the music that was left. I saw the trombone there, and I kind of inquired who does this belong to, and it ended up belonging to T-Bone Willie, who I was in 6 Feet Deep with. Eventually, I got into Say Ferris with him, and we are now currently together, still playing together after all these years, in the band called Starpool.
There was a time when we were shooting the high school scenes, and we were on location, and as I mentioned previously, it was very difficult to pull all this together in the first place, and while we were there, our funding ended up getting pulled, and so I remember a particular day, when we were normally shooting, 3 to 4 scenes a day, we actually shot probably 20 to 22 scenes, 22 setups over a period of 2 days. I'm out there, I'm script supervising, I'm helping keep everyone in order, I'm helping keeping everything's on schedule, and I'm back there flipping hamburgers and cooking hot dogs. That was one of those times where I thought, wow, is this really going to happen?
Scenes for the dance at the club, the dancing scenes. Amazing. Not only in the time that it took to set up for 2 days of solid shooting with extras and hairdressers and putting together the crew and the DJ equipment and the lighting and prepping the auditorium that we were in, when I see those shots, I'm taken completely away from the initial memory of where we were, and suddenly we are transported to Cloud 9.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Zavala, director of Rude Boy, the movie. My brother and I, Oliver, were on an extended family vacation in Cancun, Mexico. We were relaxing on the beach. We were having a few cocktails, and we started reminiscing about my transition from a geeky nerd to a copacetic rude boy. He was 10 at the time, and I was 15. But his recollection of all of those adventures that I had were pretty awesome, the way that he was able to remember everything. And it left me yearning for the fashion, the music, the 80s. The seed was definitely planted, and we began formulating ideas for a screenplay based on my true life experiences. At the time, I was working as a recording engineer at Public Recording Studios in Brea, and also at Sound Matrix Studios in Fountain Valley. I had been recording hundreds of bands during that time, and over the last 5 years of that time, I started to shoot and make music videos, and it really got the bug in me going, and it made me want to become a director. The first challenge that we encountered was, of course, the script. We started with index cards and began filling them out with the vignettes of things that had actually happened to me in the 80s.
Growing up, I watched a lot of the same movies that the neighborhood watched, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, all the great films, and I started studying the different elements, story elements, from watching documentaries and delving deeper into it. I discovered Joseph Campbell and the monomyth, and I really tried to pay homage and follow the monomyth structure. With Rude Boy the movie, it wasn't entirely possible to follow the exact structures, so what I decided was to at least pay homage to some of these. For instance, some of the scenes that kind of come and go, you may not notice. For instance, Paul hands Rudy the lighter, and that is the light of Prometheus, and he's handing over the flame, much like Ben Kenobi's handing over the lightsaber to Luke Skywalker, and so on and so forth. So we have those elements where, you know, he has the fire being passed on to him, and the fire is knowledge. Is, you know, he is now a bearer of light. I wrote the original draft, and over the course of several months, and I was working in my room, and my brother would, you know, knock on the door. Are you done with the script yet? It took me several months, and finally I got a working rough draft, and I handed it over to my brother, where then he and Julian, the producer, were able to add their elements to it. Of course, you know, I wish I could have lived with it for more time. You see this baby being born, and you want to take care of it, you want to put it in diapers, and you want to dress it the way you want to do, but at some point the little boy has to go to school and go into other hands. So I left it into the hands of my brother and Julian and everyone else that loved this baby. The main character, Rudy Gonzalez, is based very much on the life of my brother Gabe.
Oliver had chosen to tell the story through Rudy Gonzalez, based on my persona, a young gentleman who goes through high school and is bullied, and eventually goes from a geek to a pretty cool, awesome rude boy. This was particularly hard for me because my brother had kind of tapped into the emotions that I went through at that time when I was a teenager, and he was able to put them onto the script. For me, it was going to be very hard to kind of relive those moments, even though I had let those things go a long time ago. But after reading his draft, I knew the story had to be told, and I was okay with putting my life out there like that.
And I wanted to find a name that epitomized the Latino culture. The name Rudy is Rudolfo, and still have that connection to the ska scene. So Rudy Gonzalez. Rudy starts out as a pretty pitiful character. He does not get on in this culture, which is very Anglo in a sense, and all these kids that were there, the jocks and everywhere that he tried to fit in, just did not want to let him fit in. So he was just, poor guy was just looking to fit in somewhere. He, at one point, he thinks, well, maybe I'll go and hang out with the heavy metal guys, and they beat him up. Maybe he'll be a jock, and he joins the track and football team, and he gets beat up there. And so finally he finds his niche, his home in the ska scene.
Myself, I played in band in high school. I was a trumpet player, and I didn't always have the highest opinions thought of me. I wasn't one of the cool kids. I would say that I never got as many beatdowns as poor Rudy does, but I wasn't always with the in crowd or a cool person in high school. So as far as feeling some of the alienation that Rudy Gonzalez's character feels, I definitely could identify with that. The
whole ska music, as far as I had understood it, was the music that brought whites and blacks together in Europe and in London. It was that. That's why you have the black and white checkers. Is the unity of bringing black and white people together through this music.
One of the things I wanted to point about what I enjoyed the most about mixing the movie was trying to get the 80s feel, the sound of the 80s, not just, okay, well that's the correct car, the rest of it, because we had no big studio to do this in. We didn't have a Studio A or Lot B. We did this on location. So trying to find the essence and the feel of the 80s today, it wasn't easy. So some of the things for me in the sound was, for example, there's a scene with Rudy and Denise in an Orange Grove where you hear a train playing in the background. Now that's part of what our Orange County feel is growing up in Orange County, was that sound.
We both grew up in, respective Anaheim, Fullerton area, and the whole punk rock scene and just general ska, goth, whatever kind of music that we had, interest in seemed to be aligned, and so we had crossed paths many times at a recording studio. I went down to his place and jammed, and our basis of our relationship, I think, friendship was around music and playing and recording and things like that. And so yeah, we've kept in touch over the years, and then it was cool to reconnect with him and be able to work on this movie, because I was stoked when I saw the initial clips and read the script. When the time came for him to need some music for Rude Boy, I was happy to be a part of that, and we formed a working relationship and were able to work together for Rude Boy. It just opened up just a stream of a creativity in me, of ideas of what I might be able to do for the soundtrack. The first song that I presented to Gabe was Cloud 9, and I think that just going through the script, I kind of got a vibe. I had actually been to Cloud 9, so I had an idea to do kind of maybe a Cars-esque kind of a 80s type of a vibe about the club, and I thought that would be a good idea. And the song just kind of was really easy for me to write. The lyrics are, I want to go dancing on Cloud 9, and listening to those bands of that era brings back that feeling to me of going and dancing with the girls. The guys are there for the girls are there for the guys, and the lights and the knots and the rides. It was awesome. It was great working with Gabe and Ollie on the music. To realize now that Gabe was taking on all these roles and also wanted to be involved in the soundtrack seemed natural enough to me, but now I know it's such a large amount of work to do.
Probably the more fulfilling part was to be able to write some of the music that's in the movie. And one particular scene that I did not write the music for, but it's when I first saw the movie kind of like take a bigger shape, was when Rudy is with the girl up into the log ride, and it's you see this, you hear the digga 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 digga, and he's going up the log ride, and he's making out with this girl for the first time and having his first sexual experience right there on the log ride. And so the music finally put it all together. It's when I got chills to see, wow, we're doing it. We're doing it. It's levitating. We're levitating.
But us both being musicians, it was really a journey, I guess, would be to go in there and go back and forth with ideas on what he thought the scene needed, and it's his movie, so I would definitely follow his direction, and maybe thought that, you know, my ideas of what we could do as well. And there's so many different genres that you can do, especially in a movie that deals with an era as the 80s music and literally kind of going back in time. He did do his research, and he gave me a lot of references and the meaning behind the reference as to what he wanted, and we went with that, and we were able to kind of create the soundtrack that he wanted, but I was also able to put a lot of my personal input into it, and he was open to those ideas, so we worked together well as a team. It was awesome.
It's really nice to finally have a medium, a place to show this great music that really didn't get a chance in Orange County. We call ourselves the godfathers of ska, but beyond that scope, not a lot of people have heard it. So it's really nice to to hear that music start off the movie, and you hear that da 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 da. That's us. That was us. You know, fresh, authentic, just rude boys playing music. And so I thought I saw a wonderful opportunity to kind of translate that into Orange County, where when we were growing up, there was still quite a bit of blatant racism that we had in our own neighborhoods. And so Rudy personifies that experience growing up Mexican American in a white neighborhood.
It took a total of 5 years from script to screen. We were definitely learning as we were going along, but I'm so happy I went through the process. How else do you achieve a goal? You do it. I believe we ended up with 4 actual characters that were going to play Rudy Gonzalez. The first Rudy that we cast in the round of civilian actors at first seemed very eager and eager to please. But right after rehearsals went underway, it seemed he seemed to alienate himself from the troupe. He started kind of acting with an odd, flamboyant behavior. It got to the point where the other cast members enjoyed beating him up too much in the rehearsal scenes. I knew he had to go, and most of the actors were replaced. Rudy number 2, we were getting really close to our deadline to begin principal photography, and we still had no lead. Josh Pudliner came and auditioned for the role. He was impressive. He actually dressed and showed up as a rude boy. He had such a charisma and a presence. We considered him for several days. Unfortunately, he was just too tough looking to play Rudy. He, however, was perfect for Paul Valley, Rudy's sidekick. With the start date coming closer and closer, a young man who came in that was looking exactly what we were looking for, he auditioned. The only thing about him was that he had a small accent since he was raised in Mexico, and he had a little bit of trouble delivering his lines. But we were getting so close to the actual start of the movie that I said, you know what? I'm just going to coach him line by line. I'm going to get this kid through it. Rudy number 4. Exactly 1 day before shooting, I was at Straight Cat Vintage Clothing in Fullerton. We were doing a final fitting for Josh Pudliner. He kept kind of giving me these looks. He finally said to me, you know, Gabe, I've got this really good friend, Omar, who wants to audition for the movie, and I think you should really take a look at him. And I said, yeah, sure, Josh. We're going to start shooting tomorrow. We'll find a place for him in the extras, or we'll find something for your friend. And he goes, no, you don't understand. This is my really good friend Omar, who I grew up with, and we've done some acting together. He wants to audition for Rudy. And I said, oh my gosh, Josh, we're starting to shoot tomorrow. He goes, no, listen, you got to take a look at him. I was a little peeved about it, but he kind of tilted his hat, and he was looking like a rude boy, and he said, "Come on, Gabe, give him a chance." And I said, "Well, okay, we'll give him a chance, but this is too soon." He goes, "Well, he's out in the car right now." It turned out that him and Josh had been rehearsing the lines together for months. Omar was already playing Rudy. They just brought him to me as a Hail Mary. He brought in Omar. I met him. He was very personable. To my surprise, he had all the lines to the entire movie memorized. And they started to do one of the scenes right in front of me. And my jaw dropped. And I said, "He's Rudy Gonzalez." I made a very, very tough decision. I spoke to Omar and I said, "Look, if you're going to do this movie, I need you to see it all the way to the end, regardless of any obstacle that we encounter." And he promised me that he would. So, next was movie time. But first, a very, very dreadful phone call to Rudy number 3.
I thought he looked like a natural to me.
Omar did an amazing job of portraying Rudy Gonzalez. It really tested, I believe, his acting abilities and his range as an actor. It helped that the other cast members were also roommates with him in regards to helping build chemistry with the lead and the rest of the cast, and he really did an amazing job.
I think Omar did a really great job portraying Rudy in Rude Boy the movie. He was brought to us by one of our other actors, Josh Pudliner, and we'd gone through a couple of Rudys already, and all of a sudden here comes Omar, and the emotion that he was able to give us for that film, because Rudy goes through so many different things throughout this film. There are times where he's ashamed, there are times when he's proud, there are times when he's a little too big for his britches, times that he's grateful, times that he's humble, and times that he's happy, and times that he's really sad, and I was just really, really impressed with Omar's ability to just do it all.
The other cast members were just, I'll say this, everybody seemed to have their moment where they shined. It wasn't easy to coordinate so many people and get them all on the set sometimes at the same times. But once they got there and realized that the air of the set was professional, that I think they themselves were able to rise to a professional level that they hadn't previously achieved or been asked to do.
I knew that if we were going to make this movie and we were going to be on a limited budget, what I wanted to be able to do was to show the world, to show it outside in full glory, a full widescreen angle. So I picked locations that were timeless. I scouted through Anaheim. I was able to find 2 great streets to shoot on that looked the same from back in the 80s. You can see them in the beginning of the movie in the opening shots when the Rude Boys are actually riding the scooters. Robert Zemeckis in Back to the Future, the reason he picked the Marty house was because of the electrical towers that were behind the home. He said it gave it a timeless feel. I go and I visit old movie locations of some of my old favorite movies, and I think I was able to find some iconic places in Orange County, Anaheim, that look the same, and immediately you can tell that, hey, that's the place. Especially the Boysenberry Park, where there is the old Korean fighter. We used to hang out in that park when we were kids, and I was there during my teenage years, and we shot one of the most awesome scenes in the movie there on that location. So yes, location choosing was a key ingredient to making this movie look as beautiful and as big as it does.
That was some of my favorite scenes to write. Is that Rudy does reach finally. He he is presented with this new world, and he has to prove that he is worthy of this new world. So he goes through a series of tests, and he finally gets to a point where it's the point of no return. He can either continue to be the nerdy Rudy, or he can go on and explore this new world of ska and dancing and clothes and girls. Finally girls. And he chooses to go for it. One of the more challenging scenes to shoot was he is down into what we call the belly of the whale, where we actually went down into the sewers of Anaheim and filmed on location. And it's supposed to symbolize that we're in the thick of Rudy's journey, and he goes down into the pits of hell even to prove that he is worthy.
Was when we started holding rehearsals, because this movie had dancing, it had scooter riding, it had 80s lingo, but the dancing, bringing in these kids, these teenagers to play the roles of 80s teenagers was so fun, because we got to play a lot of the 80s songs, especially a lot of the ska songs, Madness, the Specials, English Beat, all the beautiful songs that we used to skank to in the days. And we had to teach these guys how to actually dance from the ground up. I mean, we danced a lot different in the 80s. I wanted to make sure that we got the right movements and the right head poses done, just like a lot of those videos from the 80s. So that was the most fun part, was coming in and bringing in old rude boys to teach us some of the moves and show how we skanked.
There's a lot of people that grew up in that era, and some people learn from the mistakes, and I think that Rudy, the character Rudy, at the end, spoiler alert, he ends up going to prison. And some people are imprisoned physically, and some people are in the prisons of their mind. And to me, it was a representation that some people were not able to let go of that part of their life. These things that happen to you in your youth, they live with you forever into adulthood. And to me, I see Rudy, he was kind of in that prison, and over time, 25 years passed. And we start off with the first space shuttle launching all the way to the very last space shuttle launching. And that time, Rudy doesn't progress too much, and all he really has to hold on to is those moments of the music and ska and all the friends and those people that are gone.
A lot of us are awkward, feel awkward when we're younger, and maybe like we don't fit in, and then sometimes we do fit in, and then maybe once we do, we get a little big for our britches sometimes, and all these things that happen throughout our lives, the constant that really has always been there, but maybe we forgot about along the way, is family. And I think that's one of the messages in this film, because when all is said and done, and Rudy's done with all of his adventures, it's him and his sister.
Well, there's compassion, and there is friendship. There's a very strong message of love and faith, and family is extremely strong throughout, whether it be a connected family and friends or your actual bloodline family. It's all strongly tied in together in this movie.
If you are a child of the 80s, a teenager in the 80s, I think you absolutely need to see this movie. It's because it's going to just remind you of all the things that were actually our life at that time. You'd be amazed at how many references and little things that are shown in the film that will take you directly back to that time where you'll remember your teenage years. If you're not of that particular time period, I think, like let's say my kids that are teens now, I think it's important for them to see the film, because I think, like I mentioned earlier, we did a good time of documenting 1984, and I think it's important to be able to see what that time was like. I think it's a very entertaining film. It's an emotional film, it's a funny film, and I think it's got a lot of things that people can appreciate. If you're Hispanic, I think you're going to love this film, because You know, there are some funny moments in this film where, you know, yes, it's funny for everybody, but if you're Hispanic, it might be a little funnier for you.
I believe that there's a strong message of unity in this movie. There's a lot of heaps of humor. Anybody who feels nostalgia for the 80s, and anybody who feels a real personal connection to ska music.
If you love ska, if you have anything to do with the Orange County scene, if you have any nostalgia for that time, this is the movie for you. This is made with heartfelt passion. This is made with love. This is a homemade movie, a love letter to the past, to our childhoods, to our adolescence.
Rudy Gonzalez is a Mexican-American teenager who doesn't find self-esteem in his home life. So he goes out into the streets of 1984 to find it. What he ends up discovering is ska.
We understand that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of supporters we have and fans, Facebook fans for this film, that are in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And so we are putting together an opportunity for you to be able to screen this film. You're going to be able to do it online, and it's going to be a Facebook event, and we're going to create the event, and you'll be able to click on that link and see all the details on how you'd be able to see Rude Boy the movie yourself.